This is what you deserve. Those were the words I heard as I looked at my fine porcelain plate, now stained with the saliva of Laura Vanderbilt, my daughter-in-law's mother. 15 people witnessed that moment, 15 pairs of eyes, silently watching as that 63-year-old woman, dressed in her pearl-cold Chanel suit, leaned over the mahogany dining table and spat at me as if I were trash. But what truly broke me was not the spit. It was the voice of my son. Mom, please behave yourself. Don't provoke her. Robert, my Robert, the boy I raised alone, cleaning other people's houses to pay for his college. The man who now looked at me with embarrassment, begging me with his eyes to be quiet, to swallow this humiliation, to not ruin his perfect Thanksgiving dinner. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It hardened. I took out my phone with hands that didn't tremble, typed 3 words and pressed send. Execute the plan. Laura let out a laugh. Who are you texting? Sophie. Your little sewing circle. I got up from the table, wiped my lips with the linen napkin, and spoke with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. My lawyers. What happened next? No one saw it coming. My name is Sophie Miller. I am 55 years old. For a long time, I was the invisible woman, the sacrificing mother, the compliant grandmother, the humble seamstress who always bowed her head. But that night, in front of that imported mahogany table and hand-embroidered tablecloths, I discovered something I had forgotten about myself, that humility doesn't mean letting them destroy you, and that a quiet woman can be preparing the most powerful move of her life. Let me tell you how a simple seamstress ended up sitting at that table, and how that same seamstress taught everyone a lesson they will never forget. 3 years ago, my life was simple, but it was mine. I lived in a small house in a neighborhood in Queens, New York, with a small yard full of purple petunias and a sewing workshop that smelled of clean fabric and Singer machine oil. Every morning, I got up at 6 o'clock, made my regular coffee with a dash of vanilla, and sat in front of my window to watch the sun light up the geranium pots. My world was small, yes, but it was honest. I sewed prom dresses, fixed hems, embroidered tablecloths for weddings. My clients were neighborhood ladies, working women like me, who paid me with crumpled bills and always gave me a 6-pack of Diet Coke or a donut. Miss Sophie, they would say affectionately, you have golden hands. I would smile. I didn't have much, but I had dignity. And I had Robert, my son, my pride, the man who achieved everything I couldn't. Robert studied business administration at New York University, graduated with honors, got a job at a real estate firm in Manhattan, and started climbing the ladder until he became a regional director. I watched him grow, and my chest filled with a joy that hurt, because every suit he wore, every important meeting he attended, every achievement he celebrated, I knew how much it had cost, how many early mornings washing other people's clothes, how many knees on the ground mopping offices, how many nights sewing until my fingers bled just to pay for one more semester. But it was worth it. Everything was worth it, or so I believed. The day Robert introduced me to Valerie, I knew something had changed. It was a Sunday in October. They came to my house without warning. I was in the yard watering the plants in my old apron and my hair pulled back in a messy braid. Mom, Robert said with a nervous smile, I want to introduce you to someone. Valerie Vanderbilt was beautiful. There was no doubt about that. Tall, thin, with that kind of polished beauty that only comes with money. Straight mahogany-colored hair, perfect nails. Clothes that probably cost more than my rent for 3 months. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller, she said with a correct but cold smile, barely extending the tips of her fingers. The pleasure is all mine, dear, I replied, wiping my hands on my apron. Come in, I'll make some coffee. Valerie looked at Robert, a quick, almost imperceptible glance, but I saw it. It was a look that said, seriously, your mother lives here. We sat in my small living room. I served regular coffee in mismatched mugs. Valerie took hers carefully, as if she feared catching poverty. Mom, Robert said, taking Valerie's hand, we have news. We're getting married. My heart skipped a beat. joy, fear, something in between. "Oh, son, how wonderful," I said, getting up to hug him. "Valerie, welcome to the family." She smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Robert has told me a lot about you, about your job." The way she said your job pierced me like a cold needle. "I'm a seamstress," I said with my chin up, "and very proud to be one." "Of course," Valerie replied with that polite smile. "It's a humble profession." Robert didn't say anything. He just squeezed Valerie's hand and changed the subject. That night after they left, I sat in front of my sewing machine and cried without knowing exactly why. Perhaps because for the first time in my life, I felt small. 2 weeks later, I was invited to meet Valerie's family. The Vanderbilt's house was in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion, electric gate, gardens that looked like they were from a magazine, a fountain at the entrance with marble cherubs. I rang the doorbell with sweaty hands holding a carrot cake I had baked since 5 o'clock that morning. An unformed employee opened the door. "Mrs. Miller," he said. "Hip, please come in. They are waiting for you on the terrace." I walked through marble hallways, past walls with enormous paintings and furniture I had only seen in magazines. My old shoes squeaked against the floor, and I wanted to disappear. On the terrace, under a pergola covered with vines, was the entire family. Laura Vanderbilt, the matriarch, sat like a queen in a white wicker armchair. Her husband Nest, a corpulent man with a gold watch. 2 more daughters with their husbands, and Valerie, radiant next to Robert. "Mom." Robert stood up smiling. "This is my mom, Sophie." "How lovely, Mrs. Miller," Laura said without getting up, examining me from head to toe. "Please have a seat." I sat on the edge of the sofa with my cake in my lap. "I brought a little dessert," I said shyly. "A carrot cake. It's my specialty." Laura looked at the cake as if I had offered her poison. What a thoughtful gesture. "Daniela," she called to an employee, "take this to the kitchen." The cake disappeared. We never saw it again. For 2 hours, I listened to the Vanderbilt family talk about things I didn't understand. Trips to Europe, investments, property, wine brands I didn't even know how to pronounce. No one asked me anything. No one included me in any conversation. I was furniture, an awkward ornament someone had forgotten to remove. When we finally said goodbye, Laura gave me 2 kisses in the air without really touching me. "Mrs. Miller," she said with a sharp smile. "How sweet that Robert has such humble roots. It makes him so authentic." On the way back, Robert drove in silence. "Isn't Valerie's family incredible?" he finally said. I looked out the window. "Yes, son, incredible." But inside something had broken. Weeks passed, the wedding was planned, and slowly I began to notice something that chilled my blood. Robert was changing. He no longer visited on Sundays. He no longer ate my turkey meatloaf with the same joy. He no longer called me Mommy. But Mom, with a more formal, more distant tone, one day while we were having coffee in my kitchen, I asked him, "Son, are you ashamed of me?" Robert almost choked. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "Of course not." "Then why do I feel like you're leaving me behind?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at his mug. He stirred the spoon in slow circles. "Mom," he finally said, "Valerie and her family are different. They have certain standards, and I need to fit in there if I want to build a future, and I don't fit into that future. It's not that. It's just that things are complicated sometimes." I got up from the table. I didn't want him to see me cry. "I understand, son. I understand perfectly. But I didn't understand anything. I only knew that the boy who swore to love me forever now looked at me as if I were a problem he needed to solve. And the worst was yet to come. Sometimes we trust the people we love too much. Sometimes we give everything without asking for anything in return. Have you also felt invisible to someone who should value you? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read them. The wedding was held in June in a garden in Newport, Rhode Island that looked like it was out of a movie. I arrived alone in a navy blue dress that I had sewn myself over 3 weeks. It was elegant, simple, dignified. But when I saw the guests in their designer dresses and their jewels shining under the sun, I felt like an intruder at my own celebration. Laura Vanderbilt looked spectacular in a champagne-colored dress and an enormous hat. She greeted me with that cold smile I already knew. "Sophie, you look lovely. Did you make your dress yourself?" "Yes, Mrs. Vanderbilt." "Oh, how talented, though. For next time, I can recommend an excellent boutique. For important events." I swallowed the humiliation as if it were bitter medicine. During the ceremony, I cried. But I don't know if I cried from happiness or from fear. I watched my Robert at the altar, so handsome in his tuxedo, looking at Valerie with those eyes full of love, and I only wanted to feel joy. I wanted to believe that everything would be fine, but something inside me knew I was losing my son. At the reception, they sat me at a table in the back, far from the main table, with Valerie's distant aunts, who barely spoke to me. From there, I watched Robert laugh with the Vanderbilts, toast with them, belong to that world I could never touch. When it was time for the mother-son dance, Robert looked for me. I walked toward him with my heart in my throat. "Mom," he whispered as we danced. "Thank you for everything, for every sacrifice. I will never forget it. I know, my love. I just want you to be happy." "I am, Mom. Valerie is incredible, and her family has opened so many doors for me." I nodded, swallowing the words I really wanted to say. "What about me? I'm important too." But I kept quiet as always. After the wedding, the months passed in a strange haze. Robert and Valerie moved into a townhouse in the Upper East Side of Manhattan that the Vanderbilts gave them as a wedding gift. A 3-story house with a terrace and a view of the park trees. I was still in my little house in Queens, sewing dresses for my clients, waiting for Robert's calls, which became more and more spaced out. One day, 6 months after the wedding, Robert called me, excited. "Mom, I have news. Valerie is pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother." My heart filled with pure, almost childlike joy. "Oh, son, how wonderful. I'm coming over right now." "Wait, Mom. I'll call you later to coordinate." Valerie is resting. And, well, you know how these things are. "Of course, son. Whatever you need." But the call to coordinate never came. Throughout Valerie's pregnancy, I felt as if I were watching my son's life through glass, close but unable to touch. Valerie's Facebook posts showed spectacular baby showers, nursery rooms worthy of a magazine, professional photo oots, and I sitting in my workshop knitting a baby blanket with my own hands, wondering if my grandson would ever use it. When Matthew was born, Robert called me from the hospital. "He's born, Mom, a beautiful boy. His name is Matthew Vanderbilt Miller." I was silent for a second. Vanderbilt Miller, not Miller Vanderbilt. "Well, Valerie's family has a tradition. The maternal surname comes first when it's the first male grandchild." Another silent humiliation again. Swallow everything. "That's fine, son. When can I go meet him?" "Tomorrow afternoon, but only for 1 hour." "Okay, Valerie needs to rest, and, well, her mom is here helping with everything." The next day, I arrived at the hospital with the blanket I had knitted, a teddy bear, and my heart full of hope. In the private room, surrounded by expensive flowers and elegant balloons, Valerie was in bed, radiant despite the fatigue. Robert was holding Matthew, and next to him, like a territorial guardian, was Laura Vanderbilt. "Sophie, I'm glad you came," Robert said. "Look, Mom, your grandson." I approached with tears in my eyes. Matthew was perfect. Small, pink, with his eyes closed and his tiny fists clenched. "Can I hold him?" Robert looked at Valerie. Valerie looked at Laura. Laura nodded as if granting permission. "Of course, Sophie, but be careful. He is very delicate. As if I hadn't raised a son alone. As if my hands, these hands that worked for years to give Robert a decent life, were now dangerous." I held Matthew with a tenderness that hurt. I looked at him. I touched his soft little face. I breathed in that new baby smell that is like pure magic. "I brought you a little blanket," I whispered. "I made it myself with all my love." Laura approached. She examined the blanket with a critical eye. How charmingly rustic. Although, you know, Sophie, these hand-knitted fabrics sometimes have fibers that can cause allergies. We'd better put it away and use the organic cotton blankets we've already bought. I felt as if I had been slapped. Robert didn't say anything. Valerie smiled sadly. But she didn't intervene either. I stayed 20 more minutes. No one offered me a seat. No one included me in the conversation about plans for the baby, the private pediatrician, the nanny they had already hired. When I said goodbye, I hugged Robert. Son, if you need help with the baby, I can. Don't worry, Mom. Valerie's mom already has everything organized. She's going to stay with us for the first few weeks. Of course, Laura would stay. Laura would be there for the first smiles, the first nights, the first magical moments of her grandson. And I would return to my empty house, to my silent workshop, to be the second-ass grandmother. In the taxi ride back, I cried uncontrollably. The driver asked me if I was okay. I told him yes, that I had just met my grandson, that they were tears of happiness. I lied. The following months were a slow, silent ordeal. I called Robert to ask about Matthew. He answered with short messages. Everything fine, Mom. I'll call you later. But later almost never came. On Facebook, I saw photos of Matthew all the time in Laura's arms in their huge house at Vanderbilt family parties where I was never invited. One Saturday afternoon, I gathered my courage and went to Robert's house without warning. I rang the doorbell. An employee opened. I'm looking for my son, Robert Miller. Do you have an appointment, ma'am? An appointment? Did I need an appointment to see my own son? No, but I am his mother. One moment. I waited at the door like a street vendor. Finally, Valerie appeared with Matthew in her arms. Sophie, what a surprise. You should have called. I wanted to see my grandson. Is Robert here? He went golfing with my dad, but come in just for a little while. Matthew has a very strict nap routine. I entered that house that smelled of expensive candles and French perfume. I sat on the edge of the sofa like an unwanted visitor. I held Matthew for 15 minutes. Valerie watched me like a hawk, correcting how I held him, how I talked to him, how everything. Oh, Sophie, not so close to your face. He could catch something. I'm not sick, Valerie. I know, but you never know. My mom says it's better to be cautious. Your mom. Always. Your mom. When I left that house, I knew that something inside me was dying. It wasn't just sadness. It was resignation. The terrible acceptance that I had lost my place in my son's life. That night, sitting in my workshop, I looked at my sewing machine. That antique singer that my mother had bequeathed to me. That machine that had fed Robert, that had paid for his school, his university, his dreams. And I wondered if it had all been worth it. If raising a son alone, sacrificing everything, breaking my back, working only for him to treat me like a nuisance now, if that was the destiny I deserved. I cried until I fell asleep on the worked, my hands resting on the cold machine, feeling that my life no longer had meaning. But life, as always, had other plans. While I was silently giving up, while I was accepting my role as the invisible mother, the second-rate grandmother, something was about to happen that would change everything forever. Sometimes when you hit rock bottom, when you have no strength left to keep swimming, life sends you a signal, a push, a reason to wake up, and my signal was about to arrive. The signal arrived 3 months later in the form of an unexpected call. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sewing the first communion dress for Mrs. Carmen's granddaughter when my phone rang. An unknown number. Mrs. Sophie Miller. Yes, speaking. This is Counselor Henry Thompson from Thompson & Associates Law Firm. I need to see you urgently. It concerns a very delicate family matter. My heart skipped a beat. I thought of Robert, of Matthew, of some terrible accident. What happened? Is my son okay? Your son is perfectly fine, but I need to speak with you in person. Can you come to my office tomorrow? The next day, I arrived at a corporate building in Midtown Manhattan. Counselor Thompson's offices were on the 22nd floor. Everything was glass, steel, and impressive views of the city. The counselor was a man in his 60s with glasses and an impeccable suit. He received me with seriousness. Mrs. Miller, thank you for coming. What I am about to tell you is uncomfortable, but you have the right to know. I sat down with my hands tightly clasped over my purse. I was the attorney for your late husband, George Miller. I froze. No one mentioned George. No one talked about the man who had abandoned us when Robert was 2 years old. George passed away 6 months ago in Miami, Florida. I felt nothing. Neither sadness nor relief, just a strange emptiness. I'm sorry, I said, out of politeness. Ma'am, George changed a lot in his final years. He regretted leaving you. He built a successful import and export business, and in his will, he left everything in the name of his son, Robert, and his grandson, Matthew. The world stopped. As in Robert inherited property, bank accounts, investments, we're talking about approximately $4 million. $4 million. And Robert knows? Yes, Mom. He came in 5 months ago to sign all the papers. He and his wife. 5 months. Robert had known for 5 months and never told me. Why are you telling me this? The counselor sighed. Because in the will, George left a letter for you. He asked for forgiveness for all the harm he caused you, and he specifically asked Robert to take care of you, never to abandon you as he did. He handed me a yellowish envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. George's handwriting was almost illegible, trembling like an old sick man's. Sophie, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I left you alone with our son and took my cowardice to another city. I built a new life, but I was never happy. I always carried the guilt of having destroyed you. I left everything to Robert because you raised him alone with your effort, with your love. But I beg him never to abandon you as I did, that he take care of you, that he give you the place you deserve. Forgive me, Sophie. Although I know I can't ask that of you, George. Tears fell onto the paper, staining the old ink. Mrs. Miller, the counselor continued, the reason I called you is because Robert asked me for absolute discretion. He didn't want you to know anything about the inheritance. In fact, he signed specific documents to prevent me from contacting you. I felt as if cold water had been thrown on me. My son deliberately hid this from me. Yes, Mom. And there's something else you should know. He took some papers out of a folder. Robert and his wife have been making significant purchases in recent months. A country house in the Hamptons valued at $800,000, a brand new BMW, shares in his father-in-law's company, and they made a donation of $100,000 to a foundation that misses. Laura Vanderbilt presides over. Each word was a stab, but they have never offered you assistance, financial or otherwise. I got up from the chair because I felt like I was suffocating. Why are you telling me all this, counselor? Because my job is to execute the will of my clients, and George's will was that, he repented and that his son fulfill his last request. Robert signed confidentiality papers with me, but I didn't sign anything regarding you. Legally, I can inform you. And what do you expect me to do with this information? The counselor looked at me with something that resembled compassion. That is up to you, Mrs. Miller, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. I left that office like a sleepwalker. I rode down the 22 floors in the elevator without seeing anything, without hearing anything, only the echo of a truth that was splitting me in two. Robert had inherited $4 million and never told me, while I kept sewing until dawn to pay my rent, to buy my groceries, to save money for Matthew's little gifts that never reached his hands. My son had millions that his absent father had left him with a single condition, that he take care of me, and he chose to hide it from me. I walked down Midtown Manhattan aimlessly through the midday crowd, feeling that I didn't know the man my son had become. When did it happen? At what moment did the boy who cried in my arms, who promised he would always love me, who said, "When I grow up, I'm gonna buy you a big house, Mommy," transform into this man who erased me from his life while spending fortunes to impress people who were worth nothing? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the heavy silence of my empty house. The next day, I did something I had never done. I actually looked through Valerie's Facebook, not just glancing over it, and there it all was. photos in the Hamptons in a beautiful wooden house with a lake. "Our little vacation home," the caption said. The new BMW parked in front of their house. My husband spoiled me with heart emojis, photos of a charity gala, Valerie and Robert next to Laura, extremely elegant, proud to support the Vanderbilt Hope Foundation. And photos of Matthew. Lots of photos of my grandson with expensive toys, designer clothes in his room that looked straight out of a catalog. But no photo of me. Not a single mention that this child had another grandmother. I closed the laptop and something inside me, something that had been dormant for years, began to wake up. It wasn't rage yet. It was something colder, more calculated. It was clarity. I picked up the phone and called Robert. "Hello, Mom. Everything okay?" "Son, I need to talk to you. It's important." "Oh, Mom, I'm busy. Can it be another day?" "No, Robert. I need to see you today." Something in my tone must have alerted him because he accepted. "All right. I'll stop by your house tonight." But he didn't come alone. He arrived with Valerie. I received them with coffee. We sat in my small living room, that space that now seems so tiny compared to their mansions. "Son, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Your father passed away a few months ago, didn't he?" Robert's face lost all color. Valerie looked at him alarmed. "How? How did you know?" "That doesn't matter. Is it true?" Robert swallowed hard. "Yes, Mom. He passed away. But I didn't want to tell you because I thought it would just hurt you to remember him. And he left you an inheritance." Silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to crush the air in the room. "Mom, yes or no, Robert?" "Yes," he finally admitted, his voice cracking. "He left us some resources." "Some resources? $4 million were some resources. And why did you never tell me?" Because I didn't want you to feel bad. Dad abandoned us. Mom, you were the one who raised me. I didn't want you to think that I now value his money more than everything you did for me." He sounded almost convincing. Almost. "And what about," clears throat, "your father's request? The letter where he asked you to take care of me?" Robert turned even paler. Valerie intervened for the first time. "Sophie, I think you're misunderstanding things. Robert loves you. We all love you. But his father's inheritance is a private matter for our family." "I am his family," I said with a calm I didn't feel. "What I meant to say is our nuclear family, Robert, me, and Matthew. We didn't want to involve you in complicated financial matters." "Involve me? I'm his mother." Robert got up nervous. "Mom, I know this looks bad, but I promise I've always thought about you. In fact, Valerie and I were planning to help you renovate your house, buy you a better car." "When? In 5 more years, in 10. It's not fair, Mom. We're building our wealth. We have to think about Matthew's future and smart investments." "And is the Hamptons house a smart investment? The BMW, the $100,000 for your mother-in-law's foundation?" Robert was speechless. Valerie stood up offended. "I don't know who gave you that information, Sophie, but it is very inappropriate for you to be investigating our finances. Inappropriate is forgetting the mother who broke her back to give her son a decent life." Robert approached, trying to take my hands. "Mom, please, let's not fight. You are important to me. You always will be." I looked him in the eyes, those eyes I had known since he was born, that I had seen cry, laugh, dream, and I recognized nothing in them. "I want you to leave," I said firmly. "Mom, please leave my house. I need to be alone." They left. Robert tried to hug me at the door, but I stepped aside. When I closed the door, I leaned against it and took a deep breath. I didn't cry. For the first time in months, I didn't cry because something had changed in me that night, something fundamental. I had stopped being the silent victim, the self-sacrificing mother who forgave everything. And although I still didn't know what I would do, although I still didn't have a plan, I knew I was no longer going to keep accepting crumbs of love at the table of my own life. The war hadn't started yet, but I had just put on the uniform. The following weeks were strange. On the outside, everything was the same. I sewed my dresses, attended to my clients, watered my plants every morning. But inside, something had changed forever. It was as if I had been asleep for years and had finally opened my eyes. Robert called me occasionally with that voice laden with guilt, asking me how I was. I responded with monosyllables. Fine, son. Busy. I didn't give him the pleasure of hearing me beg for his attention. One afternoon, while I was drinking coffee in my kitchen, my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, knocked on the door. Sophie, I've come to ask you a huge favor. My niece is getting married in 2 months and needs a dress, but not just any dress. Something special, elegant, the kind you know how to make. What's her budget? Well, she works at a bank. She earns well. She can pay what's fair. Something clicked in my head. How much is earns well, Linda? Mrs. Henderson lowered her voice as if it were a secret. Like $30,000 a year. To her, your work is gold, Sophie. I told her you charge cheap, but that you're the best. $30,000 a year. I charged $200 for a handmade wedding dress with embroidery that took me weeks. $200 that was barely enough for me to survive. Why did I charge so little? Because I always believed I didn't deserve more. Because I always believed that my work, like my life, should be humble. Tell your niece to come, I told Linda. But my prices have changed now. A handmade wedding dress with custom embroidery costs $1,500. If she wants something more elaborate, $2,000. Mrs. Henderson almost choked on her coffee. Oh, Sophie, isn't that a lot? It's fair, Linda. It's what my work is worth. 3 days later, Linda's niece came to my workshop. A pretty nervous girl about 25 years old. I showed her my portfolio, photos of dresses I had made over the years. Her eyes lit up. Mrs. Sophie, your work is beautiful. It looks like it came from an expensive boutique. Why? It is from an expensive boutique, I replied with newfound confidence. Only I'm the owner of my own boutique. She accepted the price without haggling. That night, as I made coffee, I smiled for the first time in weeks. I had discovered something simple, yet powerful. I was worth more than they had made me believe. The next day, I called all my old clients. I informed them that my prices had changed. Some were annoyed and didn't return, but others, the ones who truly valued my work, accepted without a problem. In 1 month, I had tripled my income. I wasn't a millionaire like Robert, but I was no longer the woman begging for crumbs. One Saturday morning, Robert showed up at my house without warning. He had Matthew with him. Mom, I thought you'd like to spend time with your grandson. Valerie went shopping with her mom. Of course, I was the emergency babysitter when Laura wasn't available. But I picked up Matthew, and my heart melted. He was already 1 year and 6 months old. He was walking, stumbling, he was babbling words. He was perfect. Hello, my love, I said to him. Do you remember your Grandma Sophie? Matthew looked at me with curiosity. Robert looked uncomfortable. Honestly, Mom, he hasn't spent much time with you. Valerie says it's important for him to have stable routines, and Laura's house is more stable than mine. Robert didn't answer. We spent the morning together. I gave Matthew cookies I had baked. We played in the yard. I showed him the petunias. He laughed with that pure laugh of children who don't yet know the cruelty of the world. When Robert came to pick him up, Matthew cried when saying goodbye. That broke me and healed me at the same time. Come back soon, my darling, I whispered to him. Your grandma will always love you. Robert looked at me with something that resembled regret. Mom, I know things have been weird between us, but I want to fix it. Really? How? Robert, how are you going to fix everything you've broken? I don't know, but I'll try. I promise you. Promises. Always promises. Son, I no longer need your promises. I need action. Respect. A real place in your life and in my grandson's life. You'll have it, Mom. I swear. He left with Matthew and I stayed in my house, more alone than ever, but also stronger. That night, I did something I had never done. I searched the internet for inheritance lawyers in New York City. I didn't have a plan yet, but I was investigating, learning, preparing. If Robert believed he could erase me from his life while enjoying the money his father had left specifically on the condition of taking care of me, he was very wrong. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Valerie. "Sophie, good afternoon. I'm calling to invite you to a family dinner this Saturday at my parents' house." My heart quickened. A family dinner? Yes, it's my mom's 64th birthday. It's going to be intimate. Just close family. Close family. After months of ignoring me, now I was close family. "I don't know, Valerie. I've been very busy with my work. Please, Sophie, Robert insists you come. He says it's important to him and to Matthew. 2. They were using my grandson as bait. How convenient. All right, I'll be there." Perfect. It's at 8 o'clock in the evening. "And Sophie, it's an elegant dinner. You know, something formal." The message was clear. Don't show up in your poor seamstress clothes. I hung up the phone with a bitter smile. The following days, instead of sewing a dress for a client, I sewed one for myself. Black silk, an elegant but sober cut with subtle embroidery on the neckline. Something I couldn't articulate with words, but that I knew in my heart I deserved to look good. On Saturday, I arrived at the Vanderbilt's house exactly at 8 o'clock. The party had already started. Luxury cars filled the entrance. Laughter and music came from the illuminated terrace. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The same employee as always opened for me. "Mrs. Miller, please come in. They're on the terrace." I walked down those hallways that I already knew, but this time with my head held high. On the terrace, under string lights and golden decorations, was the entire Vanderbilt family. Laura, radiant in her ivory dress, surrounded by her daughters, sons-in-law, grandchildren, and Robert and Valerie, sitting near her like satellites orbiting a sun. "Sophie!" Valerie exclaimed when she saw me. "I'm so glad you came, Mom." "Look, Sophie's here." Laura looked me up and down. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sophie, welcome. What a unique dress." "Did you make it?" "Yes, Mrs. Vanderbilt. It shows. It has that handcrafted touch." Laura's daughters laughed discreetly. I sat in the only empty chair at the end of the table, far from everyone, as always. During dinner, I listened to conversations about trips to Europe, investments, private schools for the children. No one spoke to me directly. It was as if I were a ghost until Laura, with her wineglass in hand, decided to acknowledge my existence. "Sophie, Robert told us you updated your prices." "That's great that you're thriving." "Thank you, Mrs. Vanderbilt. I just charge what is fair for my work. Of course, although you have to be careful. Sometimes when you raise your prices too much without the proper infrastructure, you can lose clientele. I'm not worried. People who value quality work are always willing to pay." Laura smiled, but there was poison in that smile. "You're right. Although, of course, you and I have very different definitions of what quality work is." As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening to me now. Perhaps at home, maybe on your way to work or lying down before bed. Write the name of your city in the comments. I want to know where the brave women like you are, the ones who understand what it means to fight in silence. The rest of the dinner passed without major incident. When they brought the cake, everyone sang happy birthday. Laura blew out the candles, surrounded by her perfect family, her perfect life. And I, sitting in my corner, wondered what the heck I was doing there. After the cake, while the others were having digestives and coffee, I got up to go to the restroom. In the hallway, I heard voices coming from the study. The door was ajar. It was Laura talking to Robert. "You have to set boundaries, Robert. Your mother is a good woman, but she can't continue to be a burden on you." "She's not a burden, Laura." "Oh, sweetie, don't be naive. You saw how she reacted with the inheritance. As if she had a right to claim something from you. Your father left her for a reason, didn't he?" "Maybe she wasn't as saintly as you think." I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. "My mom was an excellent mother," Robert replied. But his voice sounded weak without conviction. "Whatever you say, but Valerie and I think it would be better if you establish some distance. For Matthew's sake, children need to grow up surrounded by sophisticated environments. Not what? Mediocrity." "Robert, Your son deserves the best, and we can give it to him. Your mother, with all due respect, can only offer him well. You know, I should have left. I should have gotten out of there at that moment. But I remained paralyzed listening to that woman destroy my image in front of my own son. Laura is right about one thing, Robert. Your mom is very intense, I heard Valerie's voice say. She always makes awkward comments, and with the lawyer thing, she showed that she doesn't trust us. I just wanted answers, Robert mumbled. Well, she succeeded in making all of us uncomfortable. Look, I'm not saying you completely cut her off, but you do need to establish clear boundaries. Matthew can see her sometimes, but under supervision, and our family's finances are none of our business. You're right, sweetie, Laura added. Besides, now that Valerie is pregnant again, you need peace and quiet, not family drama. Pregnant again? My heart broke in two. They were going to have another baby. And no one had told me. I returned to the terrace with trembling legs. I sat down in my place. I took a sip of water and watched Robert return from the study with Valerie and Laura. He saw me and quickly looked away. Coward. The rest of the evening was torture. When I finally said goodbye, no one insisted that I stay longer. Thank you for coming, Sophie, Laura said with that icy smile. It was a pleasure having you here. Lies. Everything was lies. Robert walked me to the car. Mom, are you okay? You look pale. I'm perfect, son. Congratulations on the baby. Robert froze. How? Wall's here, Robert. Wool's always here. I got into my car without looking at him. I drove home with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, fighting back the tears that wanted to come out. But I didn't cry. Instead, I got home. I took off the elegant dress, put on my old robe, and sat down in front of my sewing machine. That singer that my mother had bequeathed to me. That machine that had fed my son. That had paid for his dreams. That represented all my effort. I touched it fondly, as one strokes an old friend. You and I have been through a lot together, I whispered to it. Haven't we? And in that moment, as my fingers traced the cold metal of the machine, as I listened to the silence of my empty house, I made a decision. I was no longer going to be the victim. I was no longer going to beg for love. I was no longer going to accept crumbs. I took out my phone and looked for a number I had saved weeks ago. Counselor Henry Thompson. I wrote him a message. Counselor, I need urgent legal advice regarding inheritances, family rights, and grandparent protection. When can you see me? The answer came in 2 minutes. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll be waiting, Mrs. Miller. I closed my phone and took a deep breath. The war was no longer just a possibility. The war had just begun. And I, Sophie Miller, seamstress of 55 years, invisible woman, forgotten mother, was ready to fight. On Monday at 10 o'clock sharp, I was sitting across from Counselor Thompson's desk. Mrs. Miller, I'm glad to see you, although the circumstances are not the best. Counselor, I need to know what my options are. Legally, my son has excluded me from his life and my grandson's life. Is there anything I can do? The counselor took out a notebook and began taking notes. Tell me everything from the beginning, and I told him everything. The hidden inheritance. The humiliations, the new pregnancy they hid from me, the conversations I had overheard. Each word hurt, but it also liberated me. When I finished, the counselor leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Mrs. Miller, legally, there are several things we can explore. First, in New York, the figure of grandparent visitation rights exists. You have the right to see your grandson. If we can prove that he is unjustly preventing that contact, a judge can order it. My heart leaped with hope. Second, regarding the inheritance, your late husband left an explicit letter asking Robert to take care of you. That is not legally binding. But what? But if we can prove that Robert is using the inheritance in a way contrary to the express wishes of the testator, and that you are in a situation of need while he spends on unnecessary luxuries, there are legal precedents for moral claims. I don't want his money, counselor. I just want them to respect me. I understand, Mom. But sometimes for people to understand the value of something, You have to hit them where it hurts the most. He was right. Robert only cared about money and his image. That's where I had to hit. There is something else, the counselor continued. I need to investigate something. May I make some inquiries with the public registry and with some contacts? Whatever is necessary. I'll call you in a few days. I left there with a mixture of hope and fear. I was taking steps into unknown territory. But there was no turning back. That same afternoon, while I was sewing Mrs. Henderson's niece's dress, my phone rang. It was Robert. Mom, I need to talk to you. Tell me. No, in person. Can I come over now? I'm working. Please, Mom, it's important. Something in his voice alerted me. It wasn't guilt, it was urgency. All right, I'll wait for you. He arrived 30 minutes later alone. That was already strange. He looked drawn, haggarded, nervous. Mom, I need to ask you a huge favor. I crossed my arms. Go ahead. I need you to sign some papers. What papers? He took some documents out of his briefcase. He put them on my work. It's a voluntary renunciation of visitation rights with Matthew. The world stopped. What? Wait, let me explain. It's not what you think. It's just a legal formality. Valerie and I are doing some paperwork for the new baby. Inheritance issues, trusts, and the lawyers asked us to have all the grandparents sign documents waiving future claims. Did Laura sign this? Robert hesitated. It is different. She's actively involved in Matthew's life. You. Well, you hardly see him, Mom. So, it's just to legally protect the children in case of... In case of what, Robert? In case of any future family conflict. I took the papers and read them slowly. Although the legal language was complicated, I understood enough. It wasn't a renunciation of visitation. It was a sworn statement that I voluntarily waived any right over my grandchildren. That I acknowledged that I did not have the financial or emotional capacity to be an active part of their lives. That I accepted sporadic visits under the parent's supervision. It was my certificate of second-ass grandmother, signed and sealed. Robert, I said with a calm that surprised even me. Did you read this? The lawyers explained it to me. Did you read it word for word? He remained silent, because it says here that I acknowledge not having the emotional capacity to care for my grandchildren. Is that what you think of me? Mom, it's just legal language. It doesn't mean anything. Everything means something, Robert, especially in legal documents. Please, Mom, just sign for me for Matthew for the new baby. I looked at him for a long time. This man of 32 years with his expensive suit and his Rolex on his wrist. This man who was once my child. No. What? I'm not going to sign this. Robert stood up agitated. Mom, you have to understand. If you don't sign, Valerie and her family will think you're being difficult. They're going to what? Distance me more? I barely see my grandson now, Robert. What else can they take from me? It's not like that, Mom. We're not trying to take anything from you. Then why do you need me to legally waive my grandmother rights? Because it's what's best for everyone. For everyone or for Laura? Robert palled. This was her idea, wasn't it? I continued. She convinced Valerie and Valerie convinced you. And now you come here to ask me to erase myself from my grandchildren's lives. It's not that. Then what is it, Robert? Explain it to me. What is it? I had never yelled at him like that. Never. Robert slumped into the chair, his head in his hands. Mom, you don't understand the pressure I live under. The Vanderbilts have opened incredible doors for me. They brought me into their company. They introduced me to important investors. Laura sees me as a son, but they have certain standards. And I don't meet those standards. Silence. That silence told me more than 1,000 words. I understand, I said with a voice I didn't recognize as my own. Your mother, the woman who worked herself to death so you could have an education, clothes, food. I'm not good enough for the Vanderbilt family. Don't say that then. What do I say, Robert? What do I say when my own son asks me to give up my grandchildren because his mother-in-law wants it that way? She doesn't want it that way. I heard it, Robert. I heard when she told you I was a burden, that I'm mediocre, that Matthew shouldn't grow up near me. Robert closed his eyes. Mom, Laura sometimes says things she doesn't really mean. She's intense. And you? What do you think? I love you, Mom. I will always love you. That's not what I asked you. I looked at him, waiting, needing to hear that he would defend me, that he would tell me I was important, that he wouldn't allow anyone to erase me from his life. But Robert just lowered his gaze, and in that silence, in that inability to defend me, I understood something devastating. My son was ashamed of me. Leave, I said with a broken voice. Mom, leave my house and take your papers. Please think about it. It's just a signature. It doesn't change anything between us, Robert. It changes everything. And I've already made my decision. I am not going to sign. He stood up. He took the documents with trembling hands. Valerie is going to be very disappointed. Let her be disappointed. I've already lived enough disappointments for 2 lifetimes. Robert reached the door. He stopped. Mom, you can still reconsider. You have until Friday. After that, things are going to get complicated. Are you threatening me? No, Mom, I'm just warning you. Laura can be difficult when she doesn't get what she wants. Let her be difficult. I can be too. He left without saying goodbye. When I closed the door, my legs gave out. I slid to the floor, hugging my knees, trying to breathe. When did everything break so badly? When did my son choose money and status over his own mother? That night, I didn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, reviewing every moment of Robert's life, searching for where I had failed as a mother. Was I too permissive, too self-sacrificing? Did I unintentionally teach him that a mother's love is something that can be despised because it will always be there? At 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. It was a message from an unknown number. Mrs. Miller, this is Mary, an employee at the Vanderbilt's house. Sorry to write to you at this hour. I need to speak with you. It's important. Please don't tell anyone I contacted you. My heart raced. What is this about? I prefer to tell you in person. Can you meet us tomorrow at the coffee shop in Central Park at 11 o'clock? Come alone. Us? Daniela and me. We both work there and we both know things that you should know. Things they are planning against you. I felt a chill run down my spine. I'll be there. At 11 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting at a table in the Central Park coffee shop with coffee I couldn't drink because my hands were trembling. 2 women in their 40s arrived with tired but honest faces. Mary, the one who had always opened the door for me, and Daniela, the one who had taken my cake that first time. They sat down nervously, looking around. Mrs. Miller, Mary began. What we are going to tell you could get us into trouble, but what they are doing is not right. It's not right. What is going on? Daniela took out her phone. 2 days ago, Mrs. Laura and Mrs. Valerie were talking in the living room. We were cleaning nearby and, well, we listened and we recorded it. Mary added, I know it's wrong, but something told us you needed to know. She handed me her phone with headphones. I pressed play. Laura's voice sounded clear. Did you convince Robert to ask his mother to sign the papers? Yes, Mom. It was today, but I don't think she'll sign. She has to sign, Valerie. If she doesn't sign voluntarily, we'll have to take other measures. What measures? Well, I have a lawyer who can prepare documents proving that Sophie is unfit to be around the children. We can use her precarious economic situation, her age, her lack of resources for medical emergencies. But is that legal? Honey, everything is legal when you have the right lawyer and enough money to pay for it. Besides, once the second baby is born, you can request preventative guardianship. Basically, a document that says that in case of any problem, the children could never stay with her. It sounds cruel, Mom. It's not cruel. It's protection. That woman is resentful because Robert inherited and she didn't. Who guarantees us that she won't try to manipulate Matthew against us when he grows up? Better to cut her off at the root. My blood froze. And is Robert okay with this? Valerie asked in the recording. Robert is okay with whatever you tell him he's okay with. That boy adores you, Valerie, and he adores this life we've given him. He's not going to risk it for his mother. Sometimes I feel bad for her. I mean, she did sacrifice for him. Please, Valerie. She did what any mother would do. She's no saint. Besides, we already gave her opportunities to be part of the family. And she's always with that victim attitude. I'm tired of her martyr face." There was a pause. "And what if she finds a lawyer?" Laura laughed, a cold, calculating laugh. "With what money? She lives hand-to-mouth sewing dresses. Good lawyers cost what she doesn't earn in a year, and even if she found one, we have more resources, better connections, and above all, we have legal custody. She has nothing." The recording ended. I took off the headphones with hands that I no longer felt. "There's more," Daniela said. "We have seen documents in Mr. Ernest's study, lawyer papers, things about preventative custody, false psychological evaluations." "False." "Yes, ma'am. They already have documents prepared saying you suffer from emotional instability, that you have made inappropriate comments in front of the child, that your house is not safe for minors. All lies. Why are you telling me this? Why are you risking your jobs?" Mary took my hand. "Because we are both mothers, Mrs. Miller. And we both know what it's like to fight for our children. What they are doing to you is not right. Period. Besides," Daniela added, "you were always kind to us. You greeted us, asked about our families. Mrs. Laura doesn't even look us in the eyes. You have a heart. They only have money." I got up from the table because I felt like I was suffocating. I walked toward the park, breathing deeply, trying to process what I just heard. It wasn't just rejection. It wasn't just humiliation. It was a deliberate conspiracy to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. Mary and Daniela followed me. "Mom, if you need those recordings for a lawyer, we can give them to you," Mary said. "Thank you," I mumbled. "Thank you for your courage." "One question, Mom," Daniela said. "Are you going to fight?" I looked at both of them. Two honest, hardworking women risking their livelihoods to do the right thing. And I understood that I couldn't give up. Not for me, but for them. For all the women like us who work in silence, who love unconditionally, who give everything expecting only crumbs of respect. "Yes," I said with the firmness that was born from the deepest part of my being. "I'm going to fight." That afternoon, I called Counselor Thompson. "Counselor, I need to see you urgently. I have evidence. I have proof. And I need you to help me protect my rights. Come tomorrow first thing and bring everything you have." That night, sitting in front of my sewing machine, I made a decision that would change everything. I was no longer going to beg for love. I was no longer going to accept humiliations. I was no longer going to be invisible. Robert, Valerie, and Laura had declared war, and I, Sophie Miller, seamstress of 55 years, forgotten mother, was ready to show them that a mother never gives up, that a grandmother fights until her last breath, and that the worst mistake they could make was to underestimate the humble seamstress. Because women like me, the ones who have survived everything, the ones who have risen from their knees 1,000 times, are much stronger than they will ever imagine. The dinner the following Saturday was going to be memorable, but not for the reasons they thought. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. Throughout the week, Counselor Thompson and I had prepared everything: documents, evidence, recordings. He contacted a known judge, prepared petitions for protection of my grandparent visitation rights, and most importantly, he thoroughly investigated the finances of Robert and the Vanderbilts. What he found was revealing. It turned out that Laura and Ernest Vanderbilt were in serious financial trouble. Bad investments, hidden debts, mortgaged property. The facade of wealth was held together with pins. And Robert, my naive Robert, had invested more than $1 million of his inheritance into his father-in-law's business. "Mrs. Miller," the counselor had told me the day before, "this is family financial fraud. Robert is being used, and the worst part is he probably doesn't even know it. What do we do tomorrow at that dinner? You just stay calm. Whatever happens, I have already activated certain legal mechanisms. We just need them to show their true colors in front of witnesses." "Witnesses?" The counselor smiled mysteriously. Trust me. So there I was, Saturday at 8 o'clock in the evening, ringing the doorbell of the Vanderbilt mansion in an elegant navy blue dress and my heart beating like a war drum. This time, I wasn't carrying a cake. This time, I was carrying dignity. Mary opened the door, looked at me knowingly, and whispered so low I could barely hear her. "Be strong, ma'am." The dinner was even more elegant than the last one. 15 guests sat at a very long mahogany table with white tablecloths, fine crystal, and flower arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I recognized some of them. Laura's daughters with their husbands, a couple of Nest's business partners, and, of course, Robert and Valerie. Valerie was already showing her pregnancy. She looked radiant in a peach-cold dress. "Sophie, you made it," Valerie said with a strained smile. "That's great. Mom wanted you to be here." Of course she wanted me to. They needed to humiliate me one last time before erasing me forever. They sat me again at the end of the table, far from Robert, far from everyone. Like an unnecessary appendix. The dinner began with oysters and champagne, conversations about politics, business, the new Mercedes that Ernest had just bought. I ate in silence, observing. I noticed how Robert avoided my gaze, how Valerie squeezed his hand every time I spoke, how Laura watched me with those hawk eyes, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. That moment arrived with the main course, a beef fillet in red wine sauce. Mine arrived in front of me, steaming and perfectly prepared. "Sophie," Laura said from her seat at the head of the table, raising her glass. "It's so good you could come tonight. I know you've been busy with your sewing projects." All eyes turned to me. "Thank you for the invitation, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Robert insisted so much that you be here. He says he misses you, right, sweetie?" Robert nodded without looking at me. "Although I understand you've been a little distant lately," Laura continued. "Robert told us he asked you for a favor. Something very simple. Just some papers, and you refused." The silence at the table was thick. "I didn't refuse a favor," I replied calmly. "I refused to renounce my rights as a grandmother." "Oh, Sophie, always exaggerating everything." Laura laughed falsely. "No one is taking anything away from you. We just wanted to formalize certain family agreements. Agreements that basically erase me from my grandchildren's lives." Laura put down her glass with a dry thump. "Look, Sophie, I'm going to be direct because I think you deserve it. You and I come from very different worlds. I believe in elegance, in education, and maintaining certain standards. And you do what you can with what you have." Someone coughed awkwardly. Valerie murmured, "Mom." But Laura ignored her. "It's not your fault for having lived such a limited life. But now Robert is part of our family, and Matthew and the baby on the way. They are Vanderbilts. They deserve to grow up in an environment of excellence, not mediocrity." My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "With all due respect, Mrs. Vanderbilt," I said, keeping my voice firm, "I raised Robert alone. I fed him. I educated him. I gave him values. And if that is mediocrity to you, then I am proud to be mediocre." "Values?" Laura let out a bitter laugh. "What values did you teach him to settle for little? To have no ambition?" "Robert had to unlearn all that when he entered our family." "Mom, that's enough," Valerie intervened, clearly uncomfortable. "No, let me finish. Sophie needs to understand her place. Look, no one is cutting you out completely. You can see your grandchildren once in a while on holidays, maybe on their birthdays, but the daily upbringing, the important decisions, the formation of their character, that's up to us." "And what does Robert think of all this?" I asked, looking directly at my son. Robert opened his mouth, but Laura spoke first. "Robert thinks the same as us, right, sweetie? My son, my child, the man I had raised with infinite love, nodded. "Mom," he said in a weak voice, "it's what's best for everyone. You'll have your space, we'll have ours. It's healthier that way. Healthier or more convenient." "Sophie, you're being dramatic now," Laura intervened. "This is exactly what I mean. Always the victim. It's always the drama. The children don't need to grow up with that negative energy." I took a deep breath. I remained calm as Counselor Thompson had asked me to. Negative energy is wanting to see my grandchildren negative energy, wanting to be part of their lives. It's negative energy not knowing your place, Laura said coldly. And your place, Sophie, is in your little house in Queens with your sewing machine, living your simple little life. Leave the important things to us. Ernest, her husband, tried to intervene, seeing that the situation was escalating. No, Ernest, someone has to tell her things as they are. Laura stood up from her chair. She walked slowly toward my side of the table. She stopped next to me. Sophie, I'm going to be very clear. You don't fit into this family. You never have. And the faster you accept it, the better for everyone. I don't need to fit into your family, I replied firmly. I am Robert's family. I am his mother. I am the grandmother of his children. You are a burden, Laura said with poison in every word. An emotional burden that Robert no longer needs to carry. She leaned over the table and then, while everyone watched in absolute shock, she spat on my plate. The spit landed on my filt, staining the wine sauce. The silence was deafening. This, Laura said without an ounce of shame, is what you deserve. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone stared horrified and paralyzed except Robert. My son, my child, looked at me with pleading eyes and whispered, Mom, please behave yourself. Don't provoke her. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It crystallized. I reached for my purse with hands that didn't tremble. I took out my phone and with a calm that I didn't know I possessed, I wrote a message and pressed send. Execute the plan. Laura let out a scornful laugh. Who are you texting, Sophie? Your little sewing circle? Are they going to come and defend me with needles and thread? I stood up. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin and I looked Laura directly in the eyes. My lawyers. The smile vanished from her face. Lawyers? Please, Sophie, you can't even afford a decent lawyer. You are mistaken, Mrs. Vanderbilt. I have several and very good ones. In fact, they are already on their way with documents, with court orders, and with some very interesting questions about financial fraud. Ernest jumped to his feet. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the investments you asked Robert to make in your company. Investments that, according to my lawyer's investigation, never actually existed. Money that simply disappeared. Robert palled. What? No. Ernest told me they were safe investments. They were a fraud, son. They used you. They took over $1 million of your inheritance to cover their debts. That's a lie, Laura screamed. Yagos, you don't have proof of anything. I have all the proof. Bank transfers, forged documents, email, everything. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Mary went to open it. 3 men in suits entered, Counselor Thompson and 2 of his colleagues. Good evening, the counselor said with impeccable professionalism. We have documents that need to be served to Mr. Robert Miller and Mr. Ernest Vanderbilt. What documents? Ernest asked, his voice trembling. A request for a financial audit for possible fraud, a court order for family visitation for Mrs. Sophie Miller with her grandchildren, and a civil lawsuit for emotional distress and conspiracy to deprive family rights. This is ridiculous. Laura tried to defend herself, but her voice no longer sounded so confident. Also, Counselor Thompson continued, we have this recording courtesy of 2 honest employees of this house. He placed a small speaker on the table and pressed play. Laura's voice filled the dining room. That woman is resentful because Robert inherited and she didn't. Who guarantees us that she won't try to manipulate Matthew against us when he grows up? Better to cut her off at the root. The faces around the table were a sight to behold. We also have documents that you prepared with false information about Mrs. Miller, fabricated psychological evaluations, statements of mental instability that never existed. All of that is illegal. We didn't. Ernest tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. Valerie looked at her mother in horror. Mom, is all this true? Laura didn't respond. Her perfectly made-up face now showed panic. I approached Robert. My son was sitting, his hands covering his head, destroyed. Son, I said softly, you were given a choice and you chose them. You chose the money, the status, the easy life. You chose to humiliate me, erase me, treat me like trash. Mom, I didn't know. You knew. Maybe not everything, but you knew they were hurting me, and you looked the other way. Tears streamed down his face. Forgive me. I can't, Robert. Not yet. Maybe someday. But today I need to leave here with what little dignity I have left. I turned to everyone present. This family took many things from me. My son, my grandson, my peace, but they couldn't take the most important thing, my self-worth. I walked toward the door. Counselor Thompson and his colleagues followed me. Before leaving, I stopped and looked at Laura one last time. Mrs. Vanderbilt, you spat on my plate, saying it was what I deserved. But life has a curious way of returning what you give, and something tells me you're going to learn that lesson very soon. I left that house with my head held high. Outside, under the starry sky, I finally allowed myself to tremble. Counselor Thompson placed a hand on my shoulder. Mrs. Miller, you were very brave in there. I don't feel brave. I feel devastated. I know, but you did the right thing, and now, legally, you have everything in your favor. And I lost my son forever. If you lost him, it was because he chose to lose himself. But the grandchildren, we're gonna get them back, I promise you. They drove me home. That night, I cried as I had never cried before. I cried for Robert, for the lost years, for the family I would never have. But among those tears, there was also something new. There was freedom. For the first time in years, I was no longer living by begging for love. I no longer accepted crumbs. I was no longer invisible. I had stood up to my oppressors and shown them that a humble woman can also fight and win. The phone rang at 2:00 in the morning. It was Robert. Mom, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. Valerie is in shock. Her parents are calling lawyers. Everything is chaos. I can imagine. Did I really invest money in a fraud? Yes, son. Your in-laws stole from you. They used you. And you were so blinded by their brilliant world that you didn't see it. Silence. Can we talk tomorrow? Just you and me. I still wonder if I did the right thing that night. If it was necessary to expose them like that in front of everyone to destroy the facade. And you? What would you have done in my place? Not tomorrow, Robert. I need time. A lot of time. I love you, Mom. Despite everything, I love you. I know, son, and I love you too. But love is not enough when there is no respect. I hung up, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly because I had won something more valuable than my son's forgiveness. I had won my self-respect. The days after that dinner were strange. There was no immediate explosion. There were no shouts or threats. Just a heavy silence, like when the sky darkens before a thunderstorm. Robert called me every day. I didn't answer. I let his voice be recorded in the voicemail. Mom, please, we need to talk. Mom, Valerie wants to apologize to you. Mom, I'm reviewing the documents you mentioned. I think you are right. I deleted all the messages without listening to them completely. Counselor Thompson came to my house every 2 days with updates. Mrs. Miller, the financial audit has already begun. They found serious irregularities in Ernest Vanderbilt's company. Robert lost almost $1,200,000. And he knows. He does now. He's devastated. I felt a pang in my chest. He was my son after all. But that pang was no longer enough to make me run back to him. And the visitation order with Matthew. The judge approved it. You can see your grandson twice a week, 4 hours each time, supervised initially, but it's a start. I cried when I heard that. Tears of relief of a small but significant victory. Thank you, counselor. Don't thank me. You did the hard work. I just moved the papers. That afternoon, while I was sewing a new client's daughter's prom dress, the doorbell rang. It was Valerie. Alone. Without Robert. Without Laura. With red and swollen eyes. Sophie, can we talk? Part of me wanted to close the door in her face, but another part, the part that still believed in redemption, let her in. We sat in my small living room. I served her water because my coffee was no longer for just anyone. I don't know where to begin, she said, her voice cracking. Start at the beginning. When I met Robert, I fell in love with him. He was different from the men in my world. He had an appetite for success, but he also had a heart. He talked about you with so much love, Sophie, about how you had sacrificed everything for him. And what happened? My mom. My mom happened. Valerie covered her face with her hands. She has always been controlling, manipulative. My whole life I've tried to please her, to be the perfect daughter. And when I brought Robert home, she saw him as a project, someone moldable. And they molded him. Yes. Little by little. Subtle comments about your house, your clothes, your way of speaking, constant comparisons with her family, her standards, and I didn't stop it. I was embarrassed to admit that my mom was being cruel. You were an accomplice. I was, she admitted through tears, and I hate myself for it because you were always kind to me, Sophie. Always. And I repaid you with contempt. And now you come because you discovered your parents are scammers. Valerie looked up, surprised by my harshness. I came because I realized that I lost my soul in the process of trying to please my mother. I came because I don't want my children to grow up in a family where money is worth more than people. I came because I need you to forgive me. I can't. I know, but I needed to tell you. Valerie got up to leave. At the door, she stopped. Robert is destroyed. He doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep. He feels guilty about everything, about you, about the lost money, about having been so blind. He should feel guilty. I know, but he is also the father of my children and your son. And maybe someday we can rebuild something. Not what it was before, because that is broken, but something new, something honest. She left. I stayed sitting in my living room, looking at the empty space she had left, wondering if redemption was possible after so much damage. That night, Robert appeared. He didn't ring the doorbell. He just sat on the steps of my porch waiting. I saw him from the window. He looked haggarded, aged. He was no longer the successful man in the impeccable suit. He was a lost child. I opened the door. Son. Mom. He stood up with difficulty, as if his legs didn't want to hold him. Can I come in? I hesitated, but finally nodded. We sat in the kitchen. I made him regular coffee with a dash of vanilla, like when he was a child, and we had long conversations after school. I lost everything, he said, his voice cracking. The money, your trust, my dignity, everything. You didn't lose everything. You have Valerie, Matthew the baby on the way, and me? Did I lose you? I looked at him for a long time. This man who had come out of my body, who had nursed at my breast, who had been my reason for living for 32 years. You didn't lose me, Robert. You abandoned me. There is a difference. I know, and I have no excuse. I was blinded by the money, the easy life, belonging to a world that had always seemed unattainable to me. And in the process, I forgot the most important thing. What did you forget? I forgot that true love doesn't come with mansions or luxury cars. It comes with turkey meatloaf at a humble table. It comes with silent sacrifice. It comes from a mother who broke her back to give me a future. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me now. I don't even know if I deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know something. That man who humiliated you, who ignored you, who let them spit on you, that's not me. Or I don't want it to be me. And who are you then? I'm trying to figure that out. I resigned from Ernest's company. I hired my own lawyers to recover what I can of the money. And I told Laura that I will never again allow her to disrespect you. And what did she say? She said I was ungrateful, that I'm destroying her family, that I will regret it. Do you regret having taken so long to defend me? Every second. We drank our coffee in silence. A different silence. No longer hostile, but weary. Robert, I need time. A lot of time. You can't break someone for years and expect them to be fixed with an apology and a cup of coffee. I understand. But I'm not going to close the door forever either. Because, despite everything, you are still my son, and I am still your mother. That doesn't change. Will you come to see Matthew? The judge approved the visitation. Yes, for him, not for you or Valerie. For Matthew. Robert nodded. And the new baby. Will you also want to meet him when he's born? I looked him directly in the eyes. That will depend on what happens in the coming months. On whether you prove with actions, not with words, that you truly changed. I will, Mom. I swear. Oaths no longer convince me, son. Actions do. He left that night with something he hadn't had in months. A little hope. And I stayed in my house, in my workshop next to my sewing machine, knowing that the road back would be long. But for the first time, it was a road where I set the rules, where my dignity was non-negotiable, where my love was no longer a free ticket for them to abuse me. 3 weeks later, I had my first supervised visit with Matthew. It was in a public park with a social worker present. Valerie brought the child, left him with me for 4 hours, and left. Matthew was shy at first. He hardly remembered me. Hello, my darling, I said, kneeling down to his height. I'm your grandma, Sophie. Do you remember me? He shook his head. My heart broke a little, but I smiled. Don't worry, we have plenty of time to get to know each other again. I had brought him a ball and homemade cookies. We played on the grass. He laughed with that clean laugh of children, and slowly he began to let go. Grandma, he said suddenly, why don't you live with us? Because I have my own little house, my love. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. I love you very much. How much? I opened my arms as wide as I could. This much? The size of the sky. He laughed and threw himself into my arms. In that moment, holding my grandson against my chest, I knew it had all been worth it. The fight, the pain, the public humiliation, everything. Because now I could see Matthew. I could be part of his life. I could be the grandmother I always wanted to be. When Valerie returned to pick him up, Matthew cried because he didn't want to leave. Grandma Sophie is fun, he told his mom. Valerie looked at me with tear-airy eyes. Thank you for not giving up, she whispered. I didn't answer. I just nodded. Because mothers, grandmothers, women like me, we never give up. We can bend, we can cry, we can bleed, but we don't break. And sooner or later, life returns what we deserve. 2 months passed. 2 months in which my life changed in ways I never imagined. The visits with Matthew became regular, no longer supervised, no longer in public parks as if I were a dangerous stranger. Now, he came to my house. We played in the yard with the petunias. We baked cookies together. And he told me stories about his school with that innocence that only 3-year-olds have. Grandma Sophie, he would say to me, why does your house smell like cinnamon? Because love is always cooking here, my darling. Robert had kept his word little by little, with actions, not with empty promises. He deposited money into my account every month. Not much, but enough so that I no longer had to sew until dawn just to pay the rent. It's not charity, he had told me. It's what it always should have been, taking care of you just like you took care of me. Valerie was also doing her part. She invited me to the pregnancy checkups. She consulted me about names for the baby. She was building bridges where before there had only been walls. But Laura was another story. Counselor Thompson called me one Tuesday afternoon. Mrs. Miller, are you sitting down? Tell me. Counselor, the audit is finished. The Vanderbilts are in serious trouble. Tax fraud, embezzlement, phantom investments. Ernest could face criminal charges and Robert's money irrecoverable for the most part. But there is good news. Justice is acting. What kind of good news? Ernest is negotiating with the prosecutor's office. To avoid jail, he has to return what he can and accept severe financial penalties. They are foreclosing on property, the mansion. Among other things, the Vanderbilts are going to lose everything they built with dirty money. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt that justice was finally served, but I only felt emptiness. And Laura is a special case. I could hear the smile in the counselor's voice. It turns out that Laura had boasted so much about her perfect quality, her connections, her status, that now all her acquaintances are distancing themselves. The friends she used to have tea with, the partners in her exclusive clubs, even her own daughters are taking distance. Why? Because no one wants to be near a scandal. And why, Mrs. Miller? You have more allies than you think. Do you remember Mary and Daniela, the employees who helped you? Of course. They talked to other employees from well-known families. It turns out that Laura Vanderbilt has a terrible reputation in the domestic service circle. Abusive, humiliating, bossy, and those employees talk among themselves. And their employers listen. And does that matter? In that world, ma'am, reputation is everything, and Laura's is ruined. 2 weeks later, Robert invited me to lunch. Just him and me, in a simple restaurant in the Chelsea neighborhood, not in those pretentious places in the Upper East Side. Mom, I need to tell you something. Valerie and I are moving. My heart skipped a beat. Where to? Not far. To a smaller house in the West Village. We sold the one in the Upper East Side. We needed the money to pay the debts that remained from the fraud. And Valerie agrees. It was her idea. She said that house was never really ours. It was a gilded cage built by her parents. How is she? Robert sighed. She's processing a lot of things. Her relationship with Laura is broken. Her mom blames her for everything. She says we destroyed the family by exposing the fraud. You didn't destroy anything. They did that all by themselves. That's what I tell her. But it's difficult for Valerie. Her whole life she believed her family was perfect. Now she realizes it was a lie. And how are you? Better. More free. Even if it sounds strange, I no longer carry that pressure of having to be someone I'm not. I no longer have to impress anyone. I just have to be a good father and a good son. That is much easier. He smiled sadly. He took my hand across the table. Mom, I know you still haven't completely forgiven us, and I understand. But I want you to know that every day I strive to be the man you raised, not the one the Vanderbilts molded. I know, son, and I see it. Will you be there when the baby is born? Will you be there? I thought about it for a moment. Yes, I'll be there. His eyes welled up with tears. Thank you, Mom. The baby was born on a Thursday in April. A girl. Small. Pink. Perfect. They named her Miranda. I was at the hospital from the beginning, not in the waiting room like a second-ass visitor, but in the room holding Valerie's hand during labor. Breathe, dear, I told her. Almost there. You're very strong. When Miranda was born and they placed her in Valerie's arms, we all cried. Robert looked at me from the other side of the bed. Mom, do you want to hold her? He passed my granddaughter to me. That small being that weighed almost nothing but was everything. Welcome to the world, my Miranda, I whispered to her. Your grandma Sophie is going to love you very much. She's going to teach you how to sew, how to bake cookies, how to be strong like the women in this family. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Laura. The silence in the room became thick. Laura looked different, smaller somehow, without her armor of expensive clothes and perfect makeup. Just a 64-year-old woman, tired and defeated. I came to meet my granddaughter, she said with a trembling voice. Valerie looked at her harshly. Mom, I told you I wasn't ready to see you yet. Please, Valerie, she's my granddaughter. And she's my daughter, and after everything you did, I already paid for it. Laura interrupted. Her voice broke. I lost my house, I lost my reputation, I lost my friends, I lost everything. You lost everything superficial, Valerie said coldly, but you never had what was important. Laura looked at me then, and in her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. Sophie, she said, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but please, I just want to see my granddaughter for 5 minutes. All eyes turned to me. It was my decision. After everything that had happened, I had the power to say no, to make Laura feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused me. It would have been easy. It would have been fair even. But I looked at Miranda in my arms and I thought about the kind of world I wanted her to grow up in. A world where resentment didn't win, where mercy existed, where people could be better than they had been. Valerie, I said softly, she is your mother. And however broken your relationship is, Miranda deserves to know her grandparents. All of them, Valerie hesitated. But only if you agree, I continued. This is your decision, not mine. Valerie looked at her mother for a long time. 5 minutes, she finally said. And if you ever disrespect Sophie again, you don't see my children again. Understood. Laura nodded, swallowing her pride. She approached the bassinet where I had placed Miranda. She looked at her with eyes full of tears. She's beautiful, she whispered. She looks like her dad, Valerie said. And she has her Grandma Sophie's eyes, Robert added. Laura turned to me, and for the first time since I had known her, she spoke without venom, without superiority, without masks. Sophie, I don't know how to apologize for everything I did to you, for how I treated you, for the dinner, the spitting, the most humiliating moment of my life. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, Laura continued, but I need you to know that I was wrong about you, about what it means to be a good mother, about what really matters, and what made you change your mind. Losing everything, being alone in that huge house without my friends, without my status, without anything to define me, and realizing that the only people who stayed were my husband and my daughters, and that I almost lost them too because of my pride. And did you learn something? Laura breathed deeply. I learned that money doesn't buy respect, that status doesn't replace love, and that a mother who raises her son alone with dignity and sacrifice is worth more than 1,000 mansions in Beverly Hills. The words hung in the air. They were not enough to erase the past, but they were a beginning. Laura, I said firmly, I'm not going to tell you I forgive you. That will take time, a lot of time, but I'm not going to feed the hatred either. Because if I learned anything from all this, it's that the poison we give to others also poisons us. Thank you, she whispered. But I continued, if you ever disrespect me again or try to keep me away from my grandchildren or manipulate my son, I promise you that this time there will be no mercy. Understood? Laura nodded. Understood. She said goodbye to Miranda, to Valerie, to Robert, and she left that room smaller than she had entered. Robert hugged me. Mom, you are incredible. I don't know how you could do that. Because I chose to be better than she was to me. Not for her, for me. That night, back at my house, I sat in front of my sewing machine, my old Singer, which had witnessed everything. We did it, I said, stroking the metal, not with revenge, with dignity, and in that moment, I understood something profound. The most poetic justice is not destroying the person who hurt you. It is living so well with so much dignity, with so much self-love that they destroy themselves with their own decisions. Laura didn't fall because I pushed her. She fell because she built her life on lies, and lies always collapse. Robert didn't lose his money because I cursed him. He lost it because he chose the easy path, and easy paths always have hidden costs. And I didn't win because I fought harder. I won because I never stopped being who I was, a mother, a woman, a person with self-worth. She once called me crazy when I demanded respect. Years later, I saw her in that hospital stripped of all her power, begging for 5 minutes with her granddaughter. Life always collects its debts. Always. 6 months passed after Miranda's birth. 6 months in which life settled into a new normal. A normal I never imagined possible. But that was infinitely better than the previous one. My Thursdays and Sundays were sacred. Those days, Matthew and Miranda came to my house. Well, Miranda was still very small, but Matthew was already my official adventure partner. Grandma Sophie, he would say to me as we kneaded dough together. When I grow up, I want to have a machine like yours. A sewing machine? Yes, to make pretty thing like you do. My heart melted every time. Robert and Valerie had found their way. They lived in their house in the West Village, smaller but more honest. Robert now worked as a manager at a different technology company without family connections, earning his place through merit. It's harder, he had told me, but I sleep better at night. Valerie had resumed a career she had abandoned to please her family interior design. She worked from home with Miranda in a nearby bassinet, creating beautiful spaces for clients who valued her for her talent, not her surname. Sophie, she told me one afternoon while we were having coffee. Do you know what the most ironic thing of all is? What? That when I had all the money in the world, I was the poorest person. And now that I live on a tight budget, I'm the richest. It's not ironic. It's logical. The wealth is not in the bank account. It's in the peace you sleep with at night. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for showing us there was another way to live. Don't thank me. You did the hard work of changing. Laura. Laura. Her story took a turn no one expected. After losing everything, after hitting rock bottom, something in her broke in a different way. She didn't break more. She rebuilt. They sold what little they had left and moved into a modest apartment in the Upper West Side. Nest, who had fallen into severe depression after the scandal, finally agreed to therapy. He's better now. He's not the arrogant man he was before, but he's not the empty shell he was for months either. He's human, fallible, real. Laura got a job at 67 years old after never having worked in her life. She started as an assistant at a designer clothing boutique, the same type of boutique where she used to be a client. The first time I saw her there was by accident. I was passing through that area and decided to go in to look at a dress for a client of mine who wanted some inspiration. And there was Laura in a store uniform, tidying hangers, attending to clients with a smile that was no longer of superiority, but of necessity. Our eyes met. She palted. I could see in her face the fear that I would humiliate her, that I would say something cruel to her, that I would remind her who she used to be. But I didn't. Good afternoon, I said politely. Good afternoon, Mom. How can I help you? I'm looking for something elegant but not ostentatious for a lady in her 50s. She took a deep breath and transformed into a professional salesperson. I have exactly what you're looking for. She showed me 3 beautiful dresses. We talked about fabrics, cuts, special occasions, and in that 10-minute conversation, there was no past. There was no resentment. Just 2 women who knew about clothes and style. When I said goodbye, I gave her a generous tip. It's not necessary, Mom, she said, almost crying. I know, but good service should be recognized. She understood the message. It wasn't pity. It was respect for someone who is rebuilding her life with honest work. Now, 2 years later, Laura and I have a strange but functional relationship. We are not friends, we never will be. But when there are family gatherings, when it's Matthew's or Miranda's birthday, we are both there. She no longer sees me as trash, and I no longer see her as an enemy. We simply coexist, and that is enough. A month ago, for Miranda's birthday, Laura arrived with a gift wrapped in simple paper. It's for you, she told me. For me, open it. It was a framed photograph. The photo of that first time I went to her house when I brought my carrot cake that we never ate. Someone had taken a picture of me in the garden without me realizing it. I looked small, awkward, out of place. And below the photo, in Laura's handwriting, it said, "The most dignified woman I know. Sorry I didn't see it sooner. L.V." I was speechless. I don't know if you want to keep it, Laura said with a trembling voice. But I needed you to know that I see now what I didn't want to see then. Thank you, Laura. No, thank you for teaching me that greatness doesn't come from the surname or the zip code. It comes from here. She touched her chest, and in that moment, I saw something I never thought I would see. Genuine redemption. My clientele grew. I no longer sew only for neighborhood ladies. Now professional women, business owners, even some artists come looking for unique handmade designs. Ms. Sophie. They tell me, your dresses have soul. And it's true because I sew every stitch with the story of my life, with the pain I overcame, with the love I never lacked, with the dignity I recovered. My prices tripled over these years. Not because I'm greedy, but because I finally understood my value. A new client came 2 weeks ago. A woman in her 40s, elegant, self-assured. I was recommended to you. They say you make dresses that transform women. I don't know about all that, I replied with humility. Don't be modest. Laura Vanderbilt personally recommended you to me. She says, you are the best seamstress in New York City. I was silent for a moment. Laura recommending me, speaking well of me, the turns life takes. Well, I said, regaining my composure, let's see what you need, and let's make something beautiful together. Robert and I healed, not overnight. It was a slow, painful process with setbacks and progress. There were days when I still felt the pain of his betrayal. Days when I looked at him and saw the man who had asked me to behave myself while his mother-in-law spat on me. But there were also days when I saw him playing with Matthew in the yard, teaching him how to ride a bike. And I remembered the boy he once was, the son I raised with so much love, and I chose to focus on those days. Mom, he told me 6 months ago during a dinner at my house, will you ever completely forgive me? I looked him in the eyes. Robert, I've already forgiven you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It leaves a scar. And scars sometimes hurt when the weather changes. I know. But scars are also proof that we survived, that the wound healed, and that's what's important. He took my hand. I love you, Mom. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am the man you raised, not the one the Vanderbilts tried to mold. You're already proving it, son. Every day. Mrs. Henderson, my lifelong neighbor, is still my confidant, but now she's also a partner in my business. She manages my schedule, answers the phone, receives clients. Sophie, she tells me, who would have thought you'd end up being a businesswoman? I never stopped being one, Linda. I just didn't value myself before. Oh, friend, if your story were written in a book, no one would believe it. Well, it's a good thing it's not a book. It's my life. And it's turning out better than I ever dreamed. Mary and Daniela. The employees who risked their jobs to help me are still my friends. They no longer work for the Vanderbilts. Mary opened her own cleaning company. Daniela studied culinary arts and now has a small cake business. The three of us meet once a month for lunch. And at those lunches, we celebrate something simple but powerful. That women who support each other are unstoppable. Mrs. Sophie, Mary told me at our last lunch, you taught us that no matter how much power people have, if they don't have dignity, they have nothing. And you taught me that courage comes in all forms. Sometimes it's defending your rights in court, and sometimes it's recording a conversation, risking your job. We toasted not with expensive champagne, but with homemade cranberry juice because the value of things is not in their price, but in the meaning we give them. There are nights when I sit in my yard under the petunias with a cup of regular coffee and I review everything that happened. The humiliation of that dinner, the spit on my plate, my son's betrayal, the conspiracy to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. And I ask myself, would I do it all again? Would I fight again, expose them, risk losing Robert forever? And the answer is always the same. Yes, because I didn't fight for revenge. I fought for dignity. I didn't seek to destroy anyone. I sought to recover myself, and that is priceless. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had remained silent. If I had agreed to be the invisible grandmother, the second-class mother, the woman who exists only to serve others, I would have had superficial peace perhaps, but I would have lost my soul. And I prefer a life of storms, but with my dignity intact, than a life of calm, but with my soul sold. Matthew asked me the other day, Grandma, why does Grandma Laura live in a small house like yours? Because sometimes life teaches us lessons, my love. And one of those lessons is that what matters is not the size of the house, but the size of the heart of the person who lives in it. And do you have a big heart? I tried to always have one, my darling, even when others were not kind to me. And is that good? It's the best, because when you have a big heart, no matter how much they hurt you, you always have room to heal. He hugged me tightly. I want to have a big heart like yours. And there, in that innocent embrace of a 6-year-old boy, I understood that everything had been worth it Because I not only recovered my dignity, I not only recovered my place as a grandmother, I also planted seeds of values in my grandchildren, seeds that will grow and bear fruit that I may not see, but that will exist. Legacy is not the mansions or the bank accounts. Legacy is the values we pass on, the lessons we teach, the way we treat others. And my legacy will be this: that Matthew and Miranda grow up knowing that dignity is not negotiable. That true love is not the kind that accepts you only when you are convenient, but the kind that values you even when it is difficult. That money comes and goes, but character remains. That a woman alone can be stronger than a whole powerful family if she has something they don't have. Integrity. A journalist called me yesterday. She wanted to interview me for an article about entrepreneurial women in their later years. Mrs. Miller, she told me, your story is inspiring. From a humble seamstress to a successful businesswoman. I am not a successful businesswoman, I corrected her. I am a woman who learned to value herself. Success is a consequence, not an objective. And what would you say to the women who are going through difficult situations, who are humiliated by their families, who feel invisible? I took a deep breath. I would tell them that the pain is real, that the sadness is valid, that they don't have to fake strength when they are breaking. And then I would tell them that inside each of us, there is a warrior, a woman who can get up 1,000 times, who can rebuild herself from the ashes, who can transform pain into power. And how do you find that warrior? You don't find her. You wake her up. And she wakes up when you decide that you are no longer going to accept crumbs of love at the table of your own life. The journalist wrote down every word. One last question, Mrs. Miller. If you could talk to the Sophie of 3 years ago, the one who was sitting at that dinner, being humiliated, what would you tell her? I closed my eyes and I saw myself, small, scared, broken. I would tell her, hang on a little longer. I know it hurts. I know you feel like you can't take any more. But the storm is about to end. And when you come out of it, you won't be the same woman. You will be stronger, wiser, freer. And what else? I would tell her that the message she is about to send, that execute the plan, is going to change her life, and that she should never, ever regret having chosen her dignity over comfort. And the interview was published last month. And since then, I have received dozens of messages from women. Women who are in similar situations, who are humiliated by their families, who feel invisible, who are on the verge of giving up. And I answer them all the same way. You matter. Your pain is valid. Your struggle is sacred. And no matter how long it takes you to get out of where you are, the important thing is that you don't give up. Because on the other side of the storm, there is a version of you waiting for you. A version that is stronger, more complete, more free. This morning, while I was sewing a client's daughter's wedding dress, Matthew ran into my workshop. Grandma, Dad says we're going to have a big party to celebrate your 58th birthday. A big party? Oh, son. You know I don't like those things, but it's important. Dad says he wants to celebrate the bravest woman in the world. I laughed. Your dad exaggerates. He doesn't exaggerate, Robert said, entering behind Matthew. It's true, son. I don't need a party. I know, but we need to celebrate you. We need to tell the world that we have the privilege of being your family. You didn't think that before? Robert knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his before. I was an idiot. But you gave me a second chance. And every day I'm grateful that you didn't give up on me. I could never give up on you. You're my son, and you are my hero. My 58th birthday party was a week ago. It wasn't in a mansion in Beverly Hills. It was in my yard under the petunias with string lights that Robert installed with catered tacos that Mrs. Henderson brought with a homemade cake that Valerie made. Everyone was there. Robert, Valerie, Matthew, Miranda, my clients, Mary and Daniela, the neighborhood neighbors, people who have seen me grow, cry, fight, and win. And yes, Laura and Ernest were there too. Laura arrived with a bouquet of petunias. I know your yard is full, she said, but these are special. I grew them myself. They're from seeds you gave me a year ago. I had given her seeds. After a family meeting, she had admired my petunias, and I, in a gesture of peace, had given her an envelope with seeds. You grew them? On the balcony of my apartment. They're the only beautiful thing I have now, and they bloomed. We looked at each other, and in that look, there was something I never thought would exist between us, understanding. We were not friends. We probably never would be, but we could coexist. We could be civil. We could, for the sake of Robert, Valerie, and the children, be in the same space without destroying each other. Laura, I said with a nod. Sophie, she replied with genuine respect. She sat at the other end of the table. She ate in silence. She held Miranda for a moment with tears in her eyes, and when she said goodbye before leaving, she approached me. Thank you, she whispered. For the letter, for not closing the door completely. I didn't do it for you, I replied with honesty. I did it for me because I don't carry hatred. Life is too short. She nodded and left. Robert hugged me. Mom, you are my hero. I'm no hero, son. I'm just a woman who learned that the best revenge is living well, and that the best punishment for the person who hurt you is for them to see you thrive without them. That night, back at my house, I looked at the stars from my yard. Everything had come full circle. Laura had lost her power, but she had gained humility. Robert had lost money, but he had gained integrity. Valerie had lost her life of luxury, but she had gained freedom. And I had lost years of relationship with my son, but I had gained something much more valuable. I had gained my dignity back. I had gained the unconditional love of my grandchildren. I had gained the respect of my son, and above all, I had gained the peace of knowing I did the right thing. Karma is not revenge. Karma is balance, and life sooner or later always finds a way to balance the scales. 3 years have passed since that dinner where everything changed. 3 years that seem like a lifetime, and at the same time a sigh. I am sitting in my workshop in this house in Queens, which is no longer just a refuge, but a home full of life. The petunias in the yard grew so much that they now cover almost the entire back wall, creating a purple curtain that sways with the afternoon wind. My Singer sewing machine is still there in the same place as always. But now it's not just my work partner, it's a teacher. Because on Saturday mornings, Matthew sits next to me on a special stool that Robert made for him and learns to sew. Grandma Sophie, he tells me with his newly turned 6 years, did you really pay for my dad's school with this machine? That's right, my darling. This machine in these hands, then it's magic. It's not magic, Matthew. It's work and love and never giving. Clears throat. Up. He nods with that seriousness of children who still believe that anything is possible. Miranda is 3 years old now. She is a whirlwind of energy with mahogany curls like her mom and those dark eyes that remind me of my mother. On Sundays, she comes with Matthew and helps me bake donuts. Her help usually means more flour on the floor than in the bowl. But I don't mind. The house gets cleaned. The memories stay forever. Grandma Sophie, she tells me with that lisp that still doesn't pronounce all the words correctly. When I grow up, I'm going to have a house like yours with purple flowers and the smell of cinnamon. And why like mine, my love? Your house is very pretty because it smells like hugs here. That girl is going to break hearts someday. But above all, she's going to heal her own because she's growing up surrounded by true love, not appearances. Robert and Valerie celebrated their 5-year wedding anniversary last month. They are no longer the same people who married in that Newport garden. They matured. They found each other. Robert now works as a manager at a technology company. He earns well, not millions, but enough to live with dignity. Every 2 weeks, he deposits a fixed amount into my account. At first, I protested. Son, I don't need your money anymore. My clients pay well now. It's not out of necessity, Mom. It's out of justice. I should have done it from the beginning, and I learned to accept it because sometimes letting others repair the damage is also a form of love. Valerie stopped being Laura's perfect doll. Now she is a woman with her own voice. Her interior design business grew so much that she had to hire 2 assistants. But the most important thing is that she is happy, genuinely happy. Sophie, she told me a few months ago while we were having coffee, do you know what the most ironic thing of all is? What? That when I had all the money in the world, I was the poorest person. And now that I live on a tight budget, I'm the richest. It's not ironic. It's logical. Wealth is not in the bank account. It's in the peace you sleep with at night. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for showing us there was another way to live. Don't thank me. You did the hard work of changing. Laura. Laura. Her story took a turn no one expected. After losing everything, after hitting rock bottom, something in her broke in a different way. She didn't break more. She rebuilt. They sold the little they had left and moved into a modest apartment in the Upper West Side. Nest, who had fallen into severe depression after the scandal, finally accepted going to therapy. He's better now. He's not the arrogant man he was before, but he's not the empty shell he was for months either. He's human, fallible, real. Laura got a job at 67 years old. After never having worked in her life, she started as an assistant at a designer clothing boutique. The same type of boutique where she used to be a client. The first time I saw her there was by accident. I was passing through that area and decided to go in to look at a dress for a client of mine who wanted some inspiration. And there was Laura in a store uniform, tidying hangers, attending to clients with a smile that was no longer of superiority, but of necessity. Our eyes met. She paled. I could see in her face the fear that I would humiliate her, that I would say something cruel to her, that I would remind her who she used to be. But I didn't. Good afternoon, I said politely. Good afternoon, Mom. How can I help you? I'm looking for something elegant but not ostentatious for a lady in her 50s. She took a deep breath and transformed into a professional salesperson. I have exactly what you are looking for. She showed me 3 beautiful dresses. We talked about fabrics, cuts, special occasions, and in that 10-minute conversation, there was no past. There was no rancor. Just 2 women who knew about clothes and style. When I said goodbye, I gave her a generous tip. It's not necessary, Mom, she said, almost crying. I know, but good service should be recognized. She understood the message. It wasn't pity. It was respect for someone who is rebuilding her life with honest work. Now, 2 years later, Laura and I have a strange but functional relationship. We are not friends. We never will be. But when there are family gatherings, when it's Matthew's or Miranda's birthday, we are both there. She no longer sees me as trash, and I no longer see her as an enemy. We simply coexist, and that is enough. A month ago, for Miranda's birthday, Laura arrived with a gift wrapped in simple paper. It's for you, she told me. For me? Open it. It was a framed photograph, the photo of that first time I went to her house when I brought my carrot cake that we never ate. Someone had taken a picture of me in the garden without me realizing it. I looked small, awkward, out of place. And below the photo, in Laura's handwriting, it said, "The most dignified woman I know. Sorry I didn't see it sooner. LV." I was speechless. I don't know if you want to keep it, Laura said with a trembling voice. But I needed you to know that I see now what I didn't want to see then. Thank you, Laura. No. Thank you for teaching me that greatness doesn't come from the surname or the zip code. It comes from here. She touched her chest, and in that moment, I saw something I never thought I would see. Genuine redemption. My clientele grew. I no longer sew only for neighborhood ladies. Now, professional women, business owners, even some artists come looking for unique handmade designs. Ms. Sophie, they tell me, your dresses have soul. And it's true because I sew every stitch with the story of my life, with the pain I overcame, with the love I never lacked, with the dignity I recovered. My prices tripled over these years, not because I'm greedy, but because I finally understood my value. A new client came 2 weeks ago, a woman in her 40s, elegant, self-assured. I was recommended to you. They say you make dresses that transform women. I don't know about all that, I replied with humility. Don't be modest. Laura Vanderbilt personally recommended you to me. She says you're the best seamstress in New York City. I was silent for a moment. Laura recommending me, speaking well of me the turns life takes? Well, I said, regaining my composure. Let's see what you need and let's make something beautiful together. Robert and I healed not overnight. It was a slow, painful process with setbacks in progress. There were days when I still felt the pain of his betrayal. Days when I looked at him and saw the man who had asked me to behave myself while his mother-in-law spat on me. But there were also days when I saw him playing with Matthew in the yard, teaching him how to ride a bike. And I remembered the boy he once was, the son I raised with so much love, and I chose to focus on those days. Mom, he told me 6 months ago during a dinner at my house, will you ever completely forgive me? I looked him in the eyes. Robert, I've already forgiven you a long time ago, but forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It leaves a scar, and scars sometimes hurt when the weather changes. I know. But scars are also proof that we survived, that the wound healed, and that's what's important. He took my hand. I love you, Mom, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm the man you raised, not the one the Vanderbilts tried to mold. You're already proving it, son, every day. Mrs. Henderson. My lifelong neighbor is still my confidant, but now she's also a partner in my business. She manages my schedule, answers the phone, receives clients. Sophie, she tells me, who would have thought you'd end up being a businesswoman? I never stopped being one, Linda. I just didn't value myself before. Oh, friend, if your story were written in a book, no one would believe it. Well, it's a good thing it's not a book. It's my life, and it's turning out better than I ever dreamed. Mary and Daniela, the employees who risked their jobs to help me, are still my friends. They no longer work for the Vanderbilts. Mary opened her own cleaning company. Daniela studied culinary arts and now has a small cake business. The three of us meet once a month for lunch, and at those lunches, we celebrate something simple but powerful, that women who support each other are unstoppable. Mrs. Sophie, Mary told me at our last lunch, you taught us that no matter how much power people have, if they don't have dignity, they have nothing. And you taught me that courage comes in all forms. Sometimes it's defending your rights in court, and sometimes it's recording a conversation, risking your job. We toasted, not with expensive champagne, but with homemade cranberry juice, because the value of things is not in their price, but in the meaning we give them. There are nights when I sit in my yard under the petunias with a cup of regular coffee, and I review everything that happened. The humiliation of that dinner, the spit on my plate, my son's betrayal, the conspiracy to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. And I ask myself, would I do it all again? Would I fight again, expose them, risk losing Robert forever? And the answer is always the same. Yes, because I didn't fight for revenge. I fought for dignity. I didn't seek to destroy anyone. I sought to recover myself. And that is priceless. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had remained silent. If I had agreed to be the invisible grandmother, the second-S mother, the woman who exists only to serve others, I would have had superficial peace perhaps, but I would have lost my soul. And I prefer a life of storms, but with my dignity intact, than a life of calm. But with my soul sold, Matthew asked me the other day, Grandma, why does Grandma Laura live in a small house like yours? Because sometimes life teaches us lessons, my love. And one of those lessons is that what matters, is not the size of the house, but the size of the heart of the person who lives in it. And do you have a big heart? I tried to always have one, my darling, even when others were not kind to me. And is that good? It's the best, because when you have a big heart, no matter how much they hurt you, you always have room to heal. He hugged me tightly. I want to have a big heart like yours. And there, in that innocent embrace of a 6-year-old boy, I understood that everything had been worth it. Because I not only recovered my dignity, I not only recovered my place as a grandmother, I also planted seeds of values in my grandchildren, seeds that will grow and bear fruit that I may not see, but that will exist. Legacy is not the mansions or the bank accounts. Legacy is the values we pass on, the lessons we teach, the way we treat others. And my legacy will be this, that Matthew and Miranda grow up knowing that dignity is not negotiable, that true love is not the kind that accepts you only when you are convenient, but the kind that values you even when it is difficult. That money comes and goes, but character remains. That a woman alone can be stronger than a whole powerful family if she has something they don't have. Integrity. A journalist called me yesterday. She wanted to interview me for an article about entrepreneurial women in their later years. "Mrs. Miller," she told me, "your story is inspiring. From a humble seamstress to a successful businesswoman." "I am not a successful businesswoman," I corrected her. "I am a woman who learned to value herself. Success is a consequence, not an objective." And what would you say to the women who are going through difficult situations, who are humiliated by their families, who feel invisible? I took a deep breath. I would tell them that the pain is real, that the sadness is valid, that they don't have to fake strength when they are breaking. And then I would tell them that inside each of us, there's a warrior. A woman who can get up 1,000 times, who can rebuild herself from the ashes, who can transform pain into power. And how do you find that warrior? You don't find her. You wake her up. And she wakes up when you decide that you are no longer going to accept crumbs of love at the table of your own life. The journalist wrote down every word. "One last question, Mrs. Miller. If you could talk to the Sophie of 3 years ago, the one who was sitting at that dinner being humiliated, what would you tell her?" I closed my eyes and I saw myself. Small, scared, broken. I would tell her, "Hang on a little longer. I know it hurts. I know you feel like you can't take any more, but the storm is about to end. And when you come out of it, you won't be the same woman. You will be stronger, wiser, freer. And what else?" I would tell her that the message she is about to send, that execute the plan is going to change her life, and that she should never, ever regret having chosen her dignity over comfort. The interview was published last month, and since then, I have received dozens of messages from women who are in similar situations, who are humiliated by their families, who feel invisible, who are on the verge of giving up. And I answer them all the same way. You matter. Your pain is valid. Your struggle is sacred, and no matter how long it takes you to get out of where you are, the important thing is that you don't give up. Because on the other side of the storm, there's a version of you waiting for you, a version that is stronger, more complete, more free. This morning, while I was sewing a client's daughter's wedding dress, Matthew ran into my workshop. Grandma, Dad says we're going to have a big party to celebrate your 58th birthday." "A big party? Oh, son. You know I don't like those things, but it's important. Dad says he wants to celebrate the bravest woman in the world." I laughed. "Your dad exaggerates." "He doesn't exaggerate," Robert said, entering behind Matthew. "It's true, son. I don't need a party." "I know, but we need to celebrate you. We need to tell the world that we have the privilege of being your family. You didn't think that before." Robert knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. "Before I was an idiot?" "But you gave me a second chance, and every day I'm grateful that you didn't give up on me." "I could never give up on you." "You're my son, and you're my hero." My 58th birthday party was a week ago. It wasn't in a mansion in Beverly Hills. It was in my yard under the petunias with string lights that Robert installed, with catered tacos that Mrs. Henderson brought, with a homemade cake that Valerie made. Everyone was there. Robert, Valerie, Matthew, Miranda, my clients Mary and Daniela, the neighborhood neighbors, people who have seen me grow, cry, fight, and win. And yes, Laura and Ernest were there too. Laura arrived with a bouquet of petunias. "I know your yard is full," she said, But these are special. I grew them myself. They're from seeds you gave me a year ago. I had given her seeds. After a family meeting, she had admired my petunias, and I, in a gesture of peace, had given her an envelope with seeds. You grew them on the balcony of my apartment. They're the only beautiful thing I have now. And they bloomed. We looked at each other. And in that look, there was something I never thought would exist between us: understanding. We were not friends. We probably never would be. But we could coexist. We could be civil. We could, for the sake of Robert, Valerie, and the children, be in the same space without destroying each other. Laura, I said with a nod. Sophie, she replied with genuine respect. She sat at the other end of the table. She ate in silence. She held Miranda for a moment with tears in her eyes, and when she said goodbye before leaving, she approached me. Thank you, she whispered, for the letter, for not closing the door completely. I didn't do it for you, I replied with honesty. I did it for me because I don't carry hatred. Life is too short. She nodded and left. Robert hugged me. Mom, you are my hero. I'm no hero, son. I'm just a woman who learned that the best revenge is living well, and that the best punishment for the person who hurt you is for them to see you thrive without them. That night, back at my house, I looked at the stars from my yard. Everything had come full circle. Laura had lost her power, but she had gained humility. Robert had lost money, but he had gained integrity. Valerie had lost her life of luxury, but she had gained freedom. And I had lost years of relationship with my son, but I had gained something much more valuable. I had gained my dignity back. I had gained the unconditional love of my grandchildren. I had gained the respect of my son. And above all, I had gained the peace of knowing I did the right thing. Karma is not revenge. Karma is balance, and life sooner or later always finds a way to balance the scales. I close the journal and turn off the light. Tomorrow will be another day. There will be dresses to sew, grandchildren to hug, regular coffee to make. There will be life. Simple, honest, beautiful, and that is more than I ever dreamed. If my story has touched your heart, if you have seen a little piece of your life in mine, if you have felt that you are not alone in your battles, then it was all worth it. Because stories are not told just to entertain. They are told to heal, to inspire, to remind us that no matter how many times they knock us to the ground, what matters is how many times we get up. And we, the women who have survived everything, we always get up. Always. Thank you for listening to me until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to hear more stories of women who transform their pain into wisdom. Every day, one woman, one life lesson. And remember, your value is not defined by those who belittle you. It is defined by you when you decide that you are no longer going to accept less than you deserve. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. God bless you, and until next time, with love and dignity.